Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation as we begin to turn the USS Focal Point toward harbor, toward port. We have the most generous shore leave policy in all of conservative talk radio. You will be on shore leave just less than 28 minutes from now, and you will have 70 hours of shore leave to roam about the weekend before we resume our post on the USS Focal Point on Monday afternoon, 1 p.m. Central Time. Don't forget to stick around for Exploring the Word right after this program is over. Good friend Bert Harper and Alex McFarland will be taking you into the Word. Tony Perkins on right after that. My colleague Crane Durham on right after Tony Perkins. And a thanks to those of you that stuck around after listening to the big dog Kevin McCullough on AFA today. Let's grab clip number 12 if we can, Rob. Speaking of the State of the Union address, here's what Newt Gingrich thinks that President Obama ought to do with the State of the Union address. Mark Levin is saying Republicans just stay home. So Mark Levin's got some advice for the Republicans. Boycott the thing. Newt has some advice for President Obama.
In his State of the State address this afternoon, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie took responsibility for mistakes made during his watch, and he fired two of his closest aides. By that standard, President Obama could spend his entire upcoming State of the Union speech, more than an hour, apologizing. He could apologize for the Obamacare website, for having lied to us about keeping our doctor and our health insurance, about Benghazi, about the economy, about the Internal Revenue Service targeting of conservatives. The list goes on and on. Whereas Christie fired people close to him, no one close to Barack Obama has had any consequence for a succession of failures that have hurt the American people.
So that's Newt Gingrich saying what President Obama ought to do is spend the entire State of the Union address apologizing, just as Chris Christie did in his State of the State address. You know, President Obama, back in his first year, he went to Cairo, gave the big speech. He did this worldwide apology tour, apologizing for all of the sins and the misdeeds of America, the fount of all the evil in the world. And what Newt is saying is, hey, maybe it's time for Barack Obama to conduct an apology tour of the United States. Now, I'm looking at where is that information about the timeline on Benghazi. And Rob, we might want to grab clip number 10 while we're ready, the Caddy K clip. Timeline of Benghazi. And remember, we haven't had a chance to talk about it a lot this week, but a Senate report came out. This was therefore a bipartisan committee report because the Senate is controlled by Democrats, which means they've got a majority on every committee. And they issued a report that said that the attacks on the Benghazi compound and annex were preventable and should have been prevented, and that the reason they weren't prevented would be because of lapses in the State Department. Now, the media covered that story, barely could mention the name of Hillary. They would use the State Department. Well, that's Hillary Clinton. That's her bailiwick. She's in charge of that. And none of them mentioned Barack Obama, even though he's in charge of this whole operation. The Government Accountability Institute came out with a timeline of Barack Obama the 5 days before the Benghazi event. And what the timeline reveals is that he failed to attend his intelligence briefing for every one of the 5 consecutive days leading up to the September 11, 2012 attack on the consulate in Benghazi. And then the next day, as you remember, he flew off to Las Vegas to party down with Beyonce and Jay-Z and $400 bottles of champagne. And they've been lying about what happened that night. And this report, and the New York Times getting all over President Obama for lying about what happened that night. This is a Senate report. You can't get around it because it's got Democrats are authors of this as well as Republicans. Saxby Chambliss, he's a Republican senator from Georgia. He said this yesterday: I can tell you that within hours, as the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, I knew that it was a terrorist attack. And within 24 hours, I knew that there was a suspected al-Qaeda leader involved and maybe even more than one individual involved with an al-Qaeda affiliate. So as to what the White House knew, surely they knew more than I did, quicker than I did. And Jeff, why don't we play that Benghazi montage? Jeff pulled together a montage of administration leaders, particularly Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, saying this was a spontaneous demonstration. It was a movie review of this supposedly anti-Muslim movie that just got out of hand. And Saxby Chambliss, the Senate report, the New York Times saying, look, we know now that was a bald-faced lie. They knew instantly this was a terrorist attack, and they knew right away that al-Qaeda had their fingerprints on this thing. Let's listen.
There are hundreds of protesters out in the street. They're right at the wall against the U.S. Embassy wall on the street that it's on, chanting slogans against the United States.
We are coming on the air because we have just learned that the U.S. ambassador to Libya has been killed. It happened overnight when angry militants stormed the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, and it appears the attack was inspired by an anti-Muslim film produced by an American-Israeli filmmaker living in California.
What happened this week in Cairo, in Benghazi, was a direct result of a heinous and offensive video.
Would you call the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi an act of terrorism?
I have no doubt about that.
And that is what we saw play out in the last 2 weeks. It was a crude and disgusting video. It sparked outrage throughout the Muslim world.
There is enough proof that it is a pre-planned act of terrorism.
Now, I have made it clear that the United States government had nothing to do with this video.
I think it's al-Qaeda.
Here's what happened. You had a video that was released by somebody who lives here, sort of a shadowy character, who is an extremely offensive video directed at Muhammad and Islam.
Let me state very clearly, and I hope it is obvious, that the United States government had absolutely nothing to do with this video.
We understand why people take offense to this video because millions of our citizens are among them.
The United States government had absolutely nothing to do with this video.
The United States government had nothing to do with this video.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we bring home 4 Americans who gave their lives for our country and our values. We've seen the heavy assault on our post in Benghazi that took the lives of those brave men. We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video that we had nothing to do with.
Well, it turns out it is true, in fact, that the United States had nothing to do with the video. It's also true that the video had nothing to do with Benghazi. So they lied repeatedly. Saxby Chambliss says, look, we all knew within minutes this was a terrorist attack. Within 24 hours, we all knew that al-Qaeda was behind it. It wasn't some kind of spontaneous demonstration. And we know that Ambassador Chris Stevens was repeatedly asking for bulked up security at both the compound and the annex, and that these requests for bulked up security were denied by Hillary Clinton. Now listen to what Katty Kay of the BBC is doing. Chris Stevens is dead. He was murdered. He was sodomized by the Muslims that attacked the compound that night. So he's not around to tell the truth. He's not around to defend himself. And listen to Katty Kay trying to divert the blame from Hillary Clinton, trying to divert the blame from Barack Obama.
It was just a rat's nest of terrorists streaming in and out. There was anarchy across the country, and if you're Secretary Clinton and you get cables from the ambassador saying we need additional security, you know, you act on that. It's not like it's just another outpost. It's like one of the hottest outposts out there. I think that is a fair criticism, and I don't know that Hillary Clinton ever answered that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always been 2 important points about this story, and neither of them, frankly, are political. One is the intelligence. Why did U.S. intelligence analysts miss what was clearly a build-up of insecurity in Benghazi? The British ambassador, for example, had been targeted in his car just before the attack on the U.S. compound. We knew that this was becoming increasingly volatile. And the other was the security issue. Why were outposts in an area, as you suggest, that was difficult, where the Americans had just, completed a war? Why were they not properly defended? And this report, in a way, is very sad, because Chris Stevens, who was the ambassador who was killed, who was clearly a brave and honorable man, was also fallible, and perhaps didn't ask for or rejected even some of the security that he might have had.
So that's the BBC blaming it on the dead guy. He didn't ask for the security he might have had. Well, in point of fact, Caddy K, he did ask for the security he might have had, and Hillary Clinton turned him down, and as a result, 4 people are dead. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Ari in Billington, North Carolina. Ari, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, as far as the unemployment in North Carolina, it would be a lot lower if we didn't have 700 million illegal aliens, 700,000 illegal aliens here, and they're at work now because things are slow. With respect to the discussion earlier about murder, I look at murder as a coin. There are 2 sides to the coin. The first side is the face side, which is that you've killed someone. And the other side of that coin is the fact that you are alive to gloat over it. You know, in the Torah, God tells Israel to pursue justice. He says, justice you shall pursue. It means you run after it. You don't let it get away. And so judgment in the Torah has always been swift and sure.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't do that, you're being kind to the evil. And if you are kind to the evil, then you will do evil to the good.
Well, very good, Ari. And, you know, that confirms or is consistent with what we read in the scriptures. This is, you know, you talk about the Torah. Here's Ecclesiastes 8:11. It's not Torah, but it's Old Testament Jewish scriptures. And this is what Solomon said in Ezekiel 8:11, talking about capital punishment. Remember, this guy the family had to wait 25 years. They had to wait 25 years for justice, for the despicable, horrendous, horrible, brutal, barbaric things that this man had done to their daughter and their sister. And here's what Ecclesiastes 8:11 says, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily, the heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. Now, people always say, well, capital punishment doesn't deter. Well, it's not going to deter if you got to wait 25 years to see justice done. How is that going to deter anybody? Somebody commits a crime in 1989, they don't have to face justice for 25 years. That's not going to deter anybody under the surface of under the face of heaven. The sentence is not carried out speedily. The heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. Focal Point AFR Talk back in 2.